Hey folks, Matt Easton here, Scholar Gladiatoria, and as promised, here is an update review of the Koning's gloves from St Mark's Fencing. So, first up, these were sent to me to review, and so I should state that at the beginning. So, it is an impartial review, but I just want to be upfront about that. But these were sent to me quite some time ago now. I think it was over 6 months ago, I think. And essentially, so to set the context, these are primarily designed as longsword gloves, okay, and they are deluxe in their both in their cost and in their quality of manufacturing, in my experience. Now, I should also state that there are some other pairs of these in my club, in my two clubs, and I have seen those in use as well, and they're not all the same generation. So I believe that there are 3 types of these that have been made. There was the original large, quite kind of orangey coloured ones, and then there were sort of some slightly smaller reddish ones, and then there's the same size in black as well. And I like the fact, it's just purely aesthetic, but I like the fact that they're not completely black. I'm currently working on some sabre gloves development myself at the moment, and they're completely black, and I'm thinking I might go for two-tone because they look a bit like giant gimp hands when they're all in black, and this kind of HEMA obsession with wearing all black, I think we need to break that mold slightly. But anyway, getting back to the gloves. So I've been using these for a few months, but I should caveat that with the fact that I don't do a huge amount of longsword sparring, but I do some, and that's the important thing. These gloves have enabled me to get back into longsword sparring a bit. I'm certainly not very good at it at the moment because I'm years out of practice of longsword now. As all you guys will know, I've been concentrating on sabre and even, you know, sort of buckler and bayonet and spear and other things. I've been doing everything apart from longsword pretty much, because for the first probably 10 years of my HEMA career, I really focused on longsword. That was my main focus. So I did tons of longsword, and I have, you know, I've competed at various events anyway. Essentially, I did years of longsword, and once everybody started switching to steel feathers, and everybody started getting more athletic, more powerful, I found there were more and more hand injuries, as I'm sure lots of other people found, and we were completely lacking proper gloves. But now we've got a great situation. We've got a range of good longsword gloves, and the main makers that come to my mind that are currently producing are the Polish sparring glove, which is used very widely and is very popular. There's Neyman gloves, which some of them share some characteristics with the sparring glove. People have mixed opinions, as far as I can tell, of the Neyman gloves, and my opinions are mixed as well, but I won't go into that. Then there's the Spez Heavies, and now the Spez Heavies definitely offer fantastic protection. My impression of the Spez Heavies is that if they fit you, they work. If they don't fit you, they really don't work. And the thing is, I think there's only 2 or 3 sizes. And personally, for some reason, the proportions of my hands, I actually have a pair of Spez Heavies. I just couldn't get them to work for me at all. I've tried mediums and larges. I've got the kind of hand size that I've got the length, as you might guess, I'm relatively slim for my height. So I've got kind of long hands, but fairly narrow hands. And for gloves, I kind of sit in that awkward area between medium and large. I kind of got the length of a large but the width of a medium. Anyway, I digress. And so I couldn't really get the Spez Heavies to work for me. I found them a bit too kind of immobile, a bit too they didn't fit the hilt very well, and they didn't give me good mobility. But I have to caveat that with the fact that I know other people in my club even who have Spez Heavies and use Spez Heavies in preference to everything else, and they certainly offer good protection. The thumb's probably the weak point. The finger's fantastically protected. So very good level of protection. The cuff is a bad design. The cuff's too big and flappy. Needs to be changed a bit. But if they work for you, they work great. Now, back onto the Koning's gloves. So the Koning's gloves are a far more complex design, okay? So certainly compared to the sparring glove, terrible name, I always say this, but it's very obviously, they're all sparring gloves. So when you say sparring, it's particularly the Polish company called Sparring Glove, their glove. If you look at that and you look at the Spez Heavies, they're simple designs. They're essentially mittens, okay? To make a fingered design is more complex. So these are really quite complex. I mean, you know, massive. As someone who has worked on developing sabers and now gloves and other bits and pieces of equipment, it is really difficult to go from concept to through prototypes, testing, and then bring something to market. That's the whole reason that there are companies that's all they do, okay? For an individual or even a couple of individuals or even a club to bring something from concept through prototype testing to marketplace is hugely impressive. So massive kudos to Anders and Axel for doing that, because it is no small task. It's not a question of just thinking about something and getting it made. It takes a long time, blood, sweat and tears. So with something as complex as these gloves, they had done amazing things to get these to market, honestly. And the other thing is affordably as well. So everyone wants something for nothing, don't they? But everyone wants things to be cheap. Now these gloves are not cheap. I think they're the most expensive HEMA gloves that you can buy. But I completely understand why, because they're covered in leather. Axel and Anders have been quite particular about where they've sourced materials from and where they've not sourced materials from, so they've not gone for the cheapest manufacturers, but they're covered in leather, and inside you've got rigid hard plates and a little bit of padding, and you've got liners. Really complex product. It's a gauntlet inside a glove, essentially. Okay, it's a plastic gauntlet inside a glove. So inside this, it's not just big gloves. Inside here you've got big hard plastic plates, okay? And you can, I was going to punch my wall, but I just realised it's covered in swords. what a terrible affliction to have. But these are super strong. Now, in the time that I've been using these, have I been hit hard in the hand? Yeah, a few times, okay? I haven't been hit, I haven't used these in competition. I haven't entered a longsword competition for years now. But yeah, I've got some training buddies. Some of you will know Darren Dadswell, for example. He can hit pretty damn hard. I also train with some other people who can hit pretty damn hard as well. And yeah, I have been hit hard in the hands with these. But do you know what? Did it hurt? Yeah, a bit. But I had no injuries, okay? So in all the time I've been using these, for months, for little bits of longsword sparring here and there, I have had not even a bruise, okay? I've had a stinging blow and that's it. So these do protect well. Do they protect as well as things like the Spez Heavies or the sparring glove? Probably not, because those are mittens, okay? And you've always, as soon as you get into fingered gloves, you've got to separate mittens from fingered gloves really in your mind, because I suspect that it will never be possible. I might be wrong, and I honestly hope I am wrong, but I suspect that you can probably never create fingered gloves that protect as well as mitten gloves, for obvious reasons, okay? But finger gloves are great because they mean that you can move all the fingers independently of each other, and you can move them like this. And one of the problems with mittens is, unless you make them that wide, which you can't do, you're never able to do that with your fingers in mittens. With this, you could put a finger over the crossguard. I sometimes use this for sword and buckler, incidentally, with a finger over the crossguard. You couldn't do that with side sword, unfortunately, because the finger's too big to get through the ring of a side sword. But for arming sword, it's fine. You've got really great grip and manipulation on the weapon. They protect really well. There are a couple of things, and this is what I'm going to talk about, what I don't like about them. Now, one of them is not really about the glove, it's about the fit. Okay, so these are mediums, and as mentioned, I personally have difficult hands because they're the width of medium and the length of long. And the problem I have had with these gloves is the fingers aren't long enough for me, okay? And when the fingers aren't long enough for you with a glove, it has a tendency to try and push the glove, as you move, it tries to push the glove off the end of your hand, okay? So that's one thing. Sometimes I've been fighting to keep the glove on my hand because when I bend, particularly this finger, it's particularly long, don't know what that means, but that finger is particularly long. When I bend my hand, it has a tendency, it starts to drag the glove off my wrist, which is not very nice when you're trying to fight, because you're kind of fighting the glove at the same time as you're fighting the other person. So that's one problem, is these fingers are too short for me. Okay, I'm sure someone will turn that into a meme. And So I probably should have got large. Although if I'd got large gloves, the fingers would have been long enough, but they probably would have been too loose on my hands this way. So I need like a medium and a half, basically. I need an ML. So there we go. These gloves are slightly too small for me in the finger length, and it is quite debilitating. The second issue is the plates sometimes, in fact, pretty much everyone, I think, finds that when they get these gloves new, the stiffness of the leather, because the leather's fresh and new and hasn't stretched and got supple yet, means that the plates on the inside of them really dig into the hands. And I know that TQ, shout out to TQ, recommends I think it's Neat's foot oil, but you could equally use any type of, you could use Dubbin, saddle soap, any type of hydrating leather food or lubricant, essentially. So anything, I would say, that you could put on shoes would probably work for this, or jackets, leather jackets. But anyway, when you first get these gloves, they will be stiff, and you have to spend a while. I actually just spent, I just put them on around the house and spent a lot of time just doing this. I also, a little tip, this is something else I did, took the glove off and I started twisting and bending the fingers like this as much as I could without the glove on, and I found that actually helped hugely. Okay, so loosening the thing up. But secondly, because there are hard plastic plates under here, sometimes when you get hit, the plastic plate digs into you a bit. But more commonly than that, you get wear and tear on your hands. And I think anybody who wears any type of armoured glove on a regular basis, Red Dragons aside, because they're a bit softer and more pliable, but if you're wearing anything like the sparring glove, the naming gloves, perhaps the Spez Heavy, and definitely these, you will get blisters. If you're sparring a lot, you will get blisters and you will build up calluses. I'm afraid that happens. It's a little bit annoying with these, and I have to say, because of the number of plates and the number of articulations, I think that it's almost slightly more likely to happen with these, especially when they're new. And I actually had to stop using them for about 2 weeks because I used them for a bunch of longsword sparring, and I built up a couple of blisters on my these knuckles down here, and it skinned them off, and it was horrible. It was bleeding inside there and stuff, so I had to wait for my fingers to heal up. I mean, you could obviously stick plasters around them, tape them up or whatever, but I just waited for my fingers to heal. I just didn't do any longsword for a few weeks and went back to using the Red Dragons and doing sabre. So yes, they can wear holes in your hands, they can be a bit brutal on your hands, particularly at the beginning, but they do soften up, they do get more supple. I should also mention, I know a couple of people who've had issues. There's very soft leather on the inside here, which is great for grip, really nice. I have had no issues at all with mine. I do know a couple of people who've had the leather here which has torn or worn through. If that happens when the gloves are still relatively new, I know that the guys at St Mark's, Axel and Anders, basically fix it for you. Okay, so someone I know got some gloves, and it was essentially, leather is skin. Sometimes in leather, it's a natural organic material. You get a flaw in it, and his glove broke through the leather on the inside very quickly, like in 2 weeks. He sent it back, and Axel just completely sorted the issue out. Anyway, so there we go. So the quality is great, the service is great. There is a bit of a waiting list, I think, still, and the protection is great. The other thing I would personally change about the design, so this is, for me, the major flaw of these gloves. I don't like how big the wrist is, okay? So if you look at the glove, it's kind of like a cone, it's kind of like a triangle. And the problem I find is, because the wrists are so big, I don't use a fetish vert with a really long grip, okay? So if people are using a really long hilt, they may not have noticed this problem. But I'm using what I call a Fiore de Liberi sized longsword. And when you do that, your wrists are closer to each other. And the problem is, as soon as you do anything from this side, these massive wrists lock up against each other, because of course your hands are bigger than your wrists on your body, and so you can do things like this quite easily when you've got your normal little wrists. And a glove that does, I would say, better wrist protection or wrist design than any other glove are the Polish sparring gloves, okay? I love the wrists on those. I don't like the mitten bits, but I love the wrists and the cuffs. And the problem I have found with the Koning's gloves is that the wrists being so big, so massive, and actually kind of looser than they need to be, is that they just get bound up and locked up. And it's not just a problem for feathers with a shorter hilt, it can also be a problem with sword and buckler as well. I've used these with sword and buckler, and I actually had to switch to using a different glove for my buckler hand, because anything where I came over here, I was finding I was basically punching my own glove to try and keep my hand close to my buckler, to keep my hand protected. So I kind of think the wrists are too big, and that's part and parcel, I think, of the fact that these gloves are quite wide. They're kind of a little bit more massive than they need to be. I would love to see a lighter, scaled down version of these with a slimmer wrist for sabre and sidesword and things like that. That would be awesome. But you'd have to change the thumb very slightly in design as well, so that you could get the thumb up more comfortably, because it's a little bit, the thumb kind of locks up when you stick it up, which obviously is part and parcel of offering really good protection for longsword, but I don't find it that easy to get the thumb up. Other people's mileage may vary on that. Anyway, so there we go, there's an update review. They are, for me, the best gloves available for longsword, for what I want. They've got the combination of dexterity, protection, the three main things that I don't like about them: the fact that these fingers are too long, so I probably personally need ones with slightly longer fingers, so I should probably have gone for the size L rather than the size M. That's the first thing. The second thing is that sometimes the plates wear holes in your hands through the skin, so the plates can be a bit brutal on your fingers sometimes. But less and less as the gloves get older and worked in. And the third thing is actually something I think needs to be changed on future generations of designs. The wrists, to me, the wrists are too massive. The wrists, I think, should come in, and I don't really like this strap. I mean, it's kind of like lacrosse gloves. This strap that goes round and is supposed to protect the gap doesn't really work very well. So I think the wrists need rethinking. So rethink the wrists, and buy gloves that fit you. That's my main upshot. So there we go. I hope that was somewhat useful. But the main point is, I do absolutely think that Koning's gloves, for me, are the best longsword gloves available at the moment. There's no other longsword glove that I would want. Although if I had to buy another one, my second would definitely be the sparring gloves. So long as they're made to fit you, so long as they're custom made to fit you, they seem to be really, really good. And they seem to be, you know, pretty much universally liked, the sparring gloves. But they are mittens and they're not fingers. So in a certain way, we've got to consider the Koning's gloves separately from the mitten designs, because I don't think it's fair to compare the two. Anyway, I hope that was useful, and I'll see you for the next video. Cheers, folks. Thanks for watching. Please subscribe. We have extra videos on Patreon, and you can follow us on Facebook.